So as this team is assembling, I just wanted to give a quick introduction as they're finding their places. We're really pleased that Women in Journalism has created this event. And Eleanor Mills, who's going to arbitrate and chair, is the person who really has enabled us to have this. I wanted to say that it's surprising how contentious a debate like this can be. And we've just listened to Malala, many of us have listened to Malala, talking about her approach to some of the geopolitical issues that women face, and girls face. And you could say that this particular issue is, very particular and almost niche, maybe or maybe not. Sorry. But what I would like to say is that in the spirit of WOW, the great welcome is to all of you for coming. Martin is part of the Being a Man Festival Committee, helping us to think about issues that men and boys face, and the sort of etiquette, I suppose, of being able to listen to different points of view and appreciate the different points of view, maybe even change one's mind. That's part of a WOW welcome. So I would like to say on behalf of WOW, thank you to Eleanor, Women in Journalism, and thank you to everybody for agreeing to take part, and long may the idea of freedom of speech continue. Thanks.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for coming to this Women in Journalism debate, which the WOW Festival have very kindly let us put on. It's a huge pleasure to be here, and particularly with such a distinguished panel. When I was thinking about how we might put this together, this was my wish list, and I'm delighted that it came about. And so, particular thanks to Katie for making it a really stellar show. So thanks for being here. I've just taken over as chair of Women in Journalism, and part of the reason we wanted to organise this debate was to launch our new campaign, which is about media sexism. From now on, we're going to be tweeting daily under the Women in Journalism Twitter account, under the media sexism hashtag, about where we think the newspapers get it wrong in their depiction of women, but also, crucially, where they get it right. So that's the kind of context in which we wanted to do this. And it seemed to us that since page 3 has become such a lightning rod for the whole notion of women, objectification, how the fairer sex are perceived, that page 3 was quite a good place to start. So today, the point of this debate is to try and answer the question, does page 3 make the world a better place? Now, from the get-go, I want to make something very clear. Women in journalism are great champions of press freedom. We totally believe in free speech. We reckon that that is the very basis of a democratic, free society. And what really makes that work is that while you may hate what someone has to say or the picture that they run about something, you will defend to the hilt their right to say it. For that reason, Women in Journalism is not affiliated to the No More Page 3 campaign. We don't think anyone should have the right to dictate to a newspaper editor what they put in their newspaper. And I also don't think that feminism should be about banning things or restricting women's choices, whatever they may be. Last week, I spent some time talking at length to lots of executives on The Sun about the whole issue of page 3 and their decision-making about it. What really comes across from Sun readers, just to put this in context, is that the paper has a proud tradition of being bolshy and not wanting to be pushed around. If you think of their famous headlines, up yours, the laws, that kind of thing, it's part of their identity. And in some ways, the more they perceive the kind of politically correct brigade telling them to get rid of page 3, the more those readers that they're inclined to kind of cling to it. So that said, it's also true that as a feminist, I disagree with page 3, and I'm on the record of saying that on various different platforms. And it's really as a mother that I came to think that the time really has come to ditch it. Let me explain why. I have 8 little nieces. We don't seem to be able to produce any boys in my family, it's all girls. And the other day I went into a garage with my own 2 daughters and my 2 nieces, that's 4 little girls under 10, and arrayed in a series of clear plastic bins at the front of the garages was a woman in a thong, I think there were a couple with a woman on the thong on the front, and page 3 was open, and there was a large picture of a woman's naked breasts. And my 6-year-old niece looked up to me and she went, "Auntie Nana, why are those ladies in the papers showing their bare bums and boobies?" And it was a good question. Why indeed? And I passionately believe that if we want to live in an equal society, one in which little girls are valued as much for their brains as for their bodies, we have to stop sending out such unequivocal signals about women being valued only for their looks or as objects of men's sexual desire. What offends me most about page 3 is the entirely one-dimensional way in which the women are portrayed, that they're slabs of meat to be looked at, that they're there for no other reason. And most depressingly, they're often the most prominent picture of women in the paper. I have to say, I didn't always feel like that. Growing up, the most famous women in Britain, and pretty well the only ones in the papers, were Maggie Thatcher, Farrah Fawcett from Charlie's Angels, Lady Diana, and Samantha Fox. I was rather fascinated by Samantha Fox. As MP Gloria Del Piero confessed in the Sunday Times last weekend, she also had a kind of, she saw them as wonderfully kind of glamorous icons. And certainly for me, Samantha Fox seemed to be the easiest one to emulate. I remember someone once joking to me that I shouldn't just do page 3, but pages 3, 4, 5, and 6. But now I feel differently. Of course, page 3 isn't the only incidence of sexism in our media. I also object to the Daily Mail's sidebar of shame. It's ceaseless misogyny, whether it's about how all career mothers are destroying their children's lives, but also the terribly critical lens that it puts on all women, whether it's cankles, bingo wings, post-baby fat, too many wrinkles, not enough wrinkles. And I hate the critical way in which it commands us to see our own and other women's bodies. It's endlessly censorious about weight, sex, all aspects of women's lives. And at least page 3 girls aren't a size 0. I often took comfort from the fact that they were a much more normal size. That said, this isn't just about the tabloids. The broadsheets aren't immune either. I edited the news review section of the Sunday Times for 10 years. I've been Saturday editor of The Guardian. I'm now editorial director of the Sunday Times, as well as being chair of Women in Journalism. And I know that I'm also guilty of putting what we call random totty onto liven up pages, gratuitous pictures of Keira Knightley or Kate Middleton, Sam Cam, Kate Moss. They're the kind of broadsheet editor's glamour model alternative. And as an editor myself, I completely understand why that happens. And even those ones who are more immune from those kind of sins, like the Financial Times or the Independent, aren't immune when it comes to media sexism either. Our own Women in Journalism research shows that they have some of the worst records for the numbers of female bylines on their front pages in Fleet Street. This whole area of how we portray women in newspapers is absolutely crucial. It's intractable, but it's important for all of us. And while I'm chair of Women in Journalism, it's something I want to raise the profile of and to really think about the good things about that. As a female editor, I really try and present women with what I call agency in the stories that we run. So it's not enough to have stories about women who are arm candy or women who are victims or issues or mummies. It's very important to show strong women doing things which they can be proud of and which are role models for our daughters and show agency in the world. And increasingly, I'm pleased by the number of older women that we see doing just that, whether it's Angela Merkel or Hillary Clinton or Theresa May. And those are the kinds of role models we'd like to see more of. Anyway, so I think that's enough from me. Without further ado, I think we should get this debate party started and ask our panel whether they think page 3 makes the world a best place. Now, just in terms of some housekeeping, everyone's going to speak for kind of 3 or 4 minutes, and then after that we'll have a bit of a debate, and we'll also open to the audience and take some questions. But I want to keep this very civilized. It's fantastic that Katie's here, and Martin, and everyone who's come. And let's remember that we're at the WOW Festival on the Southbank. We're not in a pub brawl, and keep it civil.
Damn.
Don't worry, I'll keep Martin in line. And I'm going to start Laura Bates, creator of the famous blog Everyday Sexism, which has done so much to change the debate and I feel channel a new wave of young feminist thinking around all of this subject. I'm going to ask her to kick off. Take it away, Laura.
I
want to start really briefly by just clearing up once and for all the idea that the No More Page 3 campaign has anything to do with censorship or a ban. The campaign absolutely believes in press freedom, and it is about people raising their voices to speak to the editor of The Sun and explain how they feel, in the hope that he might make the decision years on from the sexist 70s to decide that this is an outdated, sexist page that doesn't belong in the paper anymore. It's not about asking for a ban. And for me, there's three really important things here. The first thing and the main thing is context. This isn't about having a go at glamour models. This is about saying boobs aren't news. This picture is in a newspaper, and it's the biggest picture of a woman in that newspaper. It sends a really, really clear message in one of our biggest family newspapers every day, which can be seen by kids, whether it's flapping open on the tube or in the doctor's waiting room, that here are men wearing suits, running the country, playing sport, doing business, and this is what a woman's for, to stand there passively with her breasts exposed for men. It's about the fact that that suggests that's what the news is about women. And it's 2014, that's not the news about women. The news about women is that they're winning Olympic medals, that they're running charities, that they're CEOs, and there's so much more to talk about. But we run a real risk of sending a message, I think particularly to young people, by the fact that this is included in a newspaper, that this is the news about women and this is what they're there for. There isn't a picture of a bloke there standing naked for women to look at. It suggests a gender imbalance, and I think that's really important. The second thing is that I know, because I run the Everyday Sexism project, that there are instances in which Page 3 has had a really serious and direct negative impact on the lives of women and girls. My project collects women's stories, and we have heard from countless teenage girls who've talked about the way that Page 3 makes them feel about themselves. We've heard stories about girls who say that their male peers have held it up in the classroom and rated them out of 10 compared to the women on there. And while it's true that Page 3 presents a different image of women from the stick-thin ones that we see in fashion magazines, which I agree is also a problem, it's also a completely narrow, completely unrealistic and extremely specific ideal, which for many women is equally unattainable. And it's also incredibly undiverse. To suggest that Page 3 kind of promotes healthy body diversity just isn't true. It's always a relatively very slim, flat-stomached woman with large breasts, where the black and minority ethnic women, it's not promoting diversity. We've heard about women who work in male-dominated offices who found the Sun put on their desk open at Page 3 every day as a form of harassment in the workplace. We heard from a 14-year-old girl who was on the bus when the man next to her showed it to her and said, "What do you think of that then?" And when she blushed and didn't know what to say, he said, "Well, don't worry, I shouldn't expect they'll be asking you to pose with tits like yours." We've heard from women who were sexually assaulted and raped, and the Sun was actually mentioned to them by their assaulters. So I think there are specific real-life instances in which it isn't just a case of harmless fun. But the third thing I want to talk about, which is kind of a positive note really, is that this debate is about whether or not Page 3 can be a good thing in the world, whether it can be positive. And the truth is, it could be, because it's a massive page close to the front of one of our biggest national newspapers. So why not take the opportunity to promote and celebrate the incredible things that women are doing on that page? The Sun has done an incredible and valiant job of representing women's bodies for the last many, many years. Why not use that page to celebrate their careers, their intelligence, their professions, and all of the other things that women are doing in the world in a diverse way that right now just isn't coming across from Page 3.
Thanks very much, Laura. I'm now going to ask Katie Price, perhaps the most famous glamour model of them all, to respond.
Okay, just bear with me. I'm very nervous. I'm not used to doing public speaking. And I haven't got it on paper or my mind. I've got it on my iPhone, so if you just bear with me.
Very, very high tech.
And I haven't got my glasses, so I'll be wearing my iPhone, I'm afraid. Hang on a sec. So bear with me if I'm sounding like I've got diarrhea speaking. I'm not used to this. Anyway, does Page 3 make this world a better place? In my opinion, there is nothing wrong with Page 3. It's been going for decades, and it's where my career was born. In 1996, many years ago, I was on a casting and my agent rang and said a girl has not turned up for a Page 3 shoot and would I like to do it? My first thought was yes. Then my thoughts flashed through my mind. What would my mum, dad and brother say? Me being me, I thought, stuff it, I'll do it anyway. That's my impulsiveness. I thought, wow, being in the national newspaper, I'll become famous. My agency said we need to change your name as it can stop you getting other work. So we came up with the name Jordan, and that's when she was born. I turned up to be greeted by an old man called Beverly Goodway, and around his office was covered in topless pictures of women. I was only 17, so I felt a bit uncomfortable. But after minutes, this old man was a lovely man who then on for years took topless pictures of me, and I loved it. This was my own choice and wasn't pushed to do this. The pay was only £90 for 3 hours, yet people presumed I got paid loads. From doing page 3, even though I got banned after a while as they ran a poll whether I should have my boob job to enhance them or not, a high percentage voted for me not to, but yet again, me being me, I did it anyway. It became a platform for what I never in my dreams would imagine to be a journey, and I could never have expected. Nearly 2 decades later, I'm still here on the scene. Not doing page 3, but my own empire of creations. I've made and been lucky to do from selling millions of books to my question range, perfume, baby clothes, fashion, TV, and lots more. I have a beautiful family and have managed through hard work, determination, and living my dreams, been able to provide a lifestyle for myself and my children. I could never have imagined that's all thanks for starting on page 3. Many people have different views about page 3 as it's frowned upon as being cheap. Yet if you get a fashion model and a top photographer taking pictures of her topless, it becomes art or high fashion. I just don't get it. You see girls on the catwalk topless, but it's classed as fashion. People will always have views, but the woman's body has always been admired and celebrated from back centuries ago with caveman drawings and statues. Even in the war, men paid £1 to look down a telescope at my nan as a topless mermaid, which she actually got the sack for smoking. So showing the woman's body is not a big deal. A lot of feminists frown upon page 3, but where would a bigger platform be to raise awareness of breast cancer than The Sun? It sells millions of copies a day, and recently, I'm sure you're all aware, that are now, because of page 3, able to make awareness for Copperfield charity every Tuesday to get women of all ages to check their breasts for lumps and to get checked out. If this campaign saves at least one life, I challenge any of you out there to do a better job, because I don't think that's bad. The Sun is renowned for page 3. It wouldn't be the same without it, although these days I couldn't name the 3 top page 3 girls. It's lost its wow factor. I say bring back page 7 fella. So, does page 3 really have an impact on the world? Of course it doesn't. There's all the trouble in the world, what's going on, politically, wars, worldwide disasters, but what I will say is page 3 is an institution, light-hearted and cheeky. I can only share my personal experience. What's wrong with that? So in my opinion, I'm obviously pro page 3 because it's made a better world for me. That's it.
Thanks, Katie. I'd love to see the picture of your nan as a mermaid.
I know.
That's the scoop everyone's going to want now.
Yeah.
I'd now like to, often this debate is around bodies is carried out entirely in a kind of white framework. And so we were very keen today to have Lola Okolosi, a black British feminist, to talk to us about her take on all of this, as we think that's a very important part of the debate. Take it away, Lola.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Yes, I can hear myself. When I heard that I was going to be part of this panel, I'm a teacher and a writer. I teach English to boys at an inner city school in London. And when I found out that I was going to be on the panel, I thought I have to ask them what they actually think about page 3. And some of the words that they use to describe women who do page 3 are sket, slut, slag, prostitute. That was just summing up what 12-year-olds thought about page 3. When I asked them about whether or not they thought it was right for it to be in a paper, they were unanimous. It was inappropriate, were their words. One boy said, Miss, they're not like people. I mean, I know they're people, but they're not like real people. Like, you don't think that they have feelings. And often when feminists talk about objectification, that the kind of reality of what that means is lost. And I'm quite interested in looking at what page 3 does to young men and their views about women and how it creates a sense of their manhood. I asked an older group of boys what they thought about page 3. And they were the same. You know, they thought it was wrong. They didn't think that it should be in the paper. And I was really surprised by their reactions. And I asked them what they thought of the idea of falling in love with a woman who was a page 3 model. And I was expecting that they would be quite macho and proud of that fact. Like that would be the thing that you know, a 15-year-old boy would aspire to. And one boy said, "Nah, I just smash and dash that." Oh, no. Another said that he'd bang it and ditch it. And I remembered, it just triggered memories of me being in sixth form and seeing boys poring over page 3 in FHM and talking about bloody butchering the women that they were looking at. And that kind of violent and really aggressive language is hard to justify when we think about the context in which page 3 exists as a deeply unequal society. And having boys talk about women in this way is troubling, to say the least. I then talked to them about what they would expect from a woman. And again, they were really specific, and there was kind of a consensus of opinion. So they start by looking at the bum, then the boobs, and then the face. And if she didn't have a pretty face, she couldn't be their girlfriend. But she had to have all 3. It couldn't be lacking. And only a couple of boys were able to say, really quietly, in this kind of performance of like adolescent masculinity that was going on, that actually the heart matters too. And when feminists talk about the fact that page 3 helps in the objectification of women, helps to atomize what women are, that we are just a sum of our parts, that is a reality that is kind of being seen in young boys and how they view women. So for me, does the world need page 3? No, and it definitely does have an impact.
Thanks very much, Lola. This is a good moment to switch to Martin Daubney, my friend, also ex-editor of Loaded. He once told me he'd looked at thousands of tits before breakfast.
That was just the staff.
And he's particularly interesting on the kind of differences, I think, between page 3 and porn. Take it away, Martin.
Yeah, I mean, I edited Loaded for 8 years. I launched the Page 3 website in 2001. I met my beautiful wife there. I had a beautiful baby daughter on Monday, who's 5 days old. So, International Women's Day, I'm all for it. Got a new awesome woman in the world. What you say about Page 3 girls, and you know, absolutely and utterly stands against everything that I know from having worked with them for best part of 2 decades. Katie, Jordan as she was then, was Loaded's cover girl of the decade in 2004. I've worked with her many times. I've found her to be a consummate professional and a strong and burning feminist. She would refer to herself as a feminist. And the one thing I think we've learned from this festival, I was here last year defending pornography. That was interesting. Basically, there are as many ways to be a feminist as there are to be a human, it strikes me. And this one-size-fits-all condemnatory feminism, which I feel No More Page 3 gives out, I just think doesn't sit. And you have to understand that we live in a free society, and it's on the one hand, we respect freedom of speech, but only if it's the same as our voice. I think this week, the campaign really turned ugly. When the cancer campaign went onto the front of the Sun, things got really, really unpleasant on social media. Somebody who was booked in to speak tomorrow was withdrawn from the festival to the shame of people trolling her on Twitter. She was bullied out of doing that. She works by giving speeches in schools to young women about body confidence, delivering an extremely positive message. She just happens to be, you can shake your head all you like, the police are involved in this. Seriously. Okay, okay. People operating under your banner, your rank and file, not you guys, not the organisers, but No More Pastry supporters. Listen to this. This was a tweet sent out to the 4 models who were part of the Copperfield campaign this week. Okay? Just fuck off, you self-promoting cancer ghouls. Love a survivor. That was a tweet by a No More Pastry signatory, right, going out to the models. The founder of the charity, Chris, who's dying of cancer, was also trolled this week. Now, this has gone too far. I've been debating about this since the 90s. On the rare occasions when it goes to a public forum and people can vote, like at Oxford University, categorically, time and again, freedom of speech prevails. Page 3 is voted for as something that should remain. Exercise your democratic right of protest by all means. Exercise your democratic right as a consumer by not buying The Sun. Don't try and tell Sun readers what they can do. Let me tell you what I think would have happened. And I don't work for The Sun, I write for The Sun, I'm not here as a representative of The Sun, this is my opinion. If the No More Page 3 campaign hadn't come in, the page may have died a natural death. You have guaranteed its survival now. You are part of its survival, because you know what? The vast majority of Sun readers don't know No More Page 3 exists. They honestly don't. I know this because I've been involved.
Hang on.
Let me speak.
Listen, you will all get a chance to respond. Let's just say for the record here that I'm sure that the No More Page 3 official response was quite measured, and you're not responsible for those kind of trolling tweets. I think it's important to get that out there. But
No
Martin's
More Page 3
also right.
organisers, you know, the hierarchy, the HQ, were in no way responsible for any of that. You know, absolutely clear.
Yeah,
However, you know, as your organisation grows and your membership grows, then the unruly behaviour that's happening under your name is getting out of hand, I feel. And it means there's no debate anymore. There's just hate. Fine, but what happens?
Yeah, okay, look, you can have your say in a minute. Please don't shout out from the audience or we'll have to kind of abandon the entire thing. Let Martin finish, then we'll hear India, and then we will open it. We all know that trolls happen. It's not necessarily the No More Page 3 fault, but it has become part of the debate. Let Martin continue.
And it absolutely, you know, okay, this is the minority of idiots, maggots and morons. We all know that. But their words absolutely colour the opinion of people wholesale about movements like this. And I think, you know, we've been having this debate now since the 1980s when Claire Short stood up and sort of talked about it. It will never go away. You know, that's a free society, great. What's happening now, I think, is because things are getting nasty on social media, there's a recalcitrance amongst both sides, and it's going to mean there's no open dialogue. Now, if there's no open dialogue, how are we ever going to change? How are we ever going to have a mature conversation about it? You know, I just don't see how we can turn back from that now, because it's got so nasty. And, you know, I've been doing this since, you know, like I say, since the 90s, and it's the same message. And it's this constant sort of, you know, kind of, I think there's a class element to this as well, like white working class people, like, let's make a decision for them. They're thick. They don't know what they want. They don't understand objectification. It's, you know, Sun readers don't think in the same way as No More Page 3 campaigners or Everyday Sexism sort of, you know, contributors. You know, we live in a diverse society with a diverse media. You know, we should be proud of that and we should defend that. And minority rule isn't democracy.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
I don't expect a round of applause.
I'd like to introduce my dear fellow columnist and friend India Knight, who most of you might know from the Sunday Times and Twitter, but probably don't know was once a Sun sub-editor. India.
It's really annoying speaking last because I want to pick up on loads of things that people have said, but that would mean that I would go on for about 2 hours. So I'm going to stick to my script, and I'm going to read, and I'm going to talk quite fast because I think it's quite long. First thing is I don't come at page 3 from a position of disgust. I'm not repulsed by it. It really, really annoys me. It's like a kind of persistent splinter, and you just kind of wish it would go away. You know, there are things to get more worked up about involving women, like, you know, equal pay or sexual violence. that are more important than the question of page 3. So having said that, I wish it would just go away and then we could get on with the other stuff. We could get on with the sexual violence and the equal pay and all the things that properly matter. If page 3 just kind of discreetly snuck off, that'd be good. Also, I like The Sun. As Eleanor's just said, I used to work for it. It's a fantastic newspaper put together by very bright and energetic people, and as I'm sure you all know, journalists are interchangeable. So, you know, it's entirely possible to start at the Daily Mail and end up at the Guardian, and the same is true of The Sun. So the Sun newspaper and all who sail in her are not necessarily terrible people who push tits in your face. It's fine. I'm also happy with nudity. I'm cool with porn. I'm cool with people wanking. I understand how page 3 has for decades been a really effective platform for a certain kind of ambitious girl who just wanted to get herself noticed and turn into Katie in an ideal world. So I'm not going to sit on my middle-class throne and patronize those women and, you know, deliver homilies about how they'd have maybe done better if they'd stayed on at school, because I just think that's nonsense. I really admire Katie and many women like her. But the point is that times change and the culture changes, and page 3 is stuck in the 70s. We don't say packy anymore, we don't say poofter anymore, we don't say spastic. I think page 3 belongs in that world. And we've heard at length how women feel when they are confronted with an open newspaper, and they're sitting on the bus with their child, and there's the tits, or they're taking their car to the garage, and there's the tits. You know, I think we're all agreed that objectifying women is not nice, even if those women choose to be objectified. But it just feels just really kind of old and stale now. It feels like it belongs to Benny Hill shows and kind of honk jokes. You know, it's like, it's not good. So my point, actually, ultimately, is fundamentally a commercial point. I think it's bad for The Sun to continue running page 3. Page 3 used to be a kind of seaside postcard thing. It was kind of a nod and a wink, and it was a bit cheeky. Nothing would frighten the horses. Girls next door with their chests out, not threatening, nothing. It was carry-on films, Barbara Windsor's bra pinging off, Benny Hill chasing hot birds in bikinis. All of this stuff passed for family viewing in the 1970s. It belongs in that world where, you know, it was okay to pinch your secretary's bottom, it was okay for men to shout out about your tits in the street. In that context, page 3, in that sort of from mid-70s to mid-80s context, page 3 was actually weirdly wholesome. It was kind of more wholesome than what went on outside. There was a whole culture of tasteful, harmless, sexy pictures around at the time. You know, it was like an all lads together, it's not porn, it's page 3. The Pirelli calendar would be another example, but of course the Pirelli calendar was shot by people like David Bailey, which is where we come into this, your class point, which I think is very true. And I mean, I think page 3 is about class, and the only properly valid pro-page 3 argument is that why should the liberal, left-leaning middle class impose its ideals on people who haven't gone to Oxford? I think that is quite iffy territory, and we'll hopefully discuss it later. But anyway, I've lost a page on my train of thought. Hang on. Yeah, so anyway, page 3 comes out of this saucy, friendly, harmless 70s thing. Unfortunately, as we're currently seeing in courtrooms and newspaper headlines, there was something really, really badly the matter with that entire culture, with that saucy, nudge, wink, wink culture. It was festering underneath all the cheeky stuff. Women were having a terrible time. It was a horrible period. And the problem with page 3 is it's still there. It's stuck. That's the territory it inhabits. It belongs with the honk hand gestures, the pinched asses, the sexist banter and jokes, the small daily humiliations endured by millions of women who went out to work. It belongs with Benny Hill, and Benny Hill is dead. So are lad mags. So, thank God, is Jimmy Savile. I just don't think The Sun ought to be associating itself with that period, and I think that by merely continuing to exist, it does, and that's why I think it should go.
Now, I think we've heard some really interesting different kinds of perspectives there. I know that feelings are running high on the floor, so let's start by taking some pictures, but I absolutely promise you that if this becomes a shouting match, there'll be no more questions and we'll just talk amongst ourselves, okay? Let's see. Yes, there was a lady over here who was shouting out earlier. Why don't we, let's hear what you wanted to say. About
different
trolls.
one.
And I just don't think that it was a necessary part of the argument.
Okay, fair enough.
Could I pick up on that as well?
Everybody's doing it, so it's cool.
Okay, Laura, do you want to respond to that briefly?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Martin, that I receive hundreds of messages every week from people detailing how I should be raped, how I should be murdered. Yeah. And I know that the No More Page 3 campaign do as well. So for you to take something completely unrelated that we would all be united in our condemnation of and that we all suffer from and suggest that that's somehow an argument against their campaign, for me suggests that you just don't have any arguments actually against their campaign.
I think it's important there to distinguish between page 3 and also a much kind of broader current of misogyny in society, which I think is to a large extent fueled by internet pornography and some of the much worse kinds of degradations. Certainly when Lola's talking about the attitudes that the boys in her class talk about, that strikes me as coming more from that kind of pornified conversation than it does specifically from page 3. And I'd like Martin to talk about that because I think you'll be surprised by what he says.
Yeah, I mean, I made a TV show called Porn on the Brain last year, and I went out to sort of prove the thesis, could porn be addictive and what did it do to young men? We did a brain study which showed, the world's first study, that showed that, young lads, that we had 19 boys who identified themselves as addicted to pornography, was taking their lives over. And we put them in a brain study, and we looked at their brains in real time as they looked at pornographic stimulation, and their brains behaved in exactly the same way as addictive brains to, understood addictions such as gambling, alcohol, cocaine, and heroin. And I spent a lot of time with these lads and went to porn rehab with them. And my opinion of pornography was fundamentally changed by what I saw. But I don't think page 3 is porn. I think it's as simple as I think soft porn is such a loose definition. The definition I worked under as an editor of a magazine, and the definition the editor of The Sun works under, is that porn begins and ends with either sexual intimacy between two people or nudity of genitals. I don't accept the argument that page 3 is porn. I do accept, however, that this undercurrent of pornography is affecting how young men react towards women. And,
when Lola talks about the kind of separation of bits,
absolutely.
They say bottoms, breasts, faces.
We definitely found that young men watching porn are looking at women now as a collection of body bits. Yeah. Yeah, and they are looking at anal porn, and they see a girl and they want anal sex with them. It's a direct menu that's prescribing, often body-punishing sex. I'm not the Antichrist. I understand that this is a significant issue. When I made the program looking at how it affected boys, I was condemned because I didn't make a program that how it affected girls. It's like, you can't win.
Can I just...
India, do you want to come in here? And then I'll take another... And then do you...
I just wanted to say about porn, the other thing I don't understand about page 3 is if you want to look at tits, all the tits in the world, enough tits to last you until your dying day, are online.
Every possible iteration.
And I think
it's made of porn. So the only people who need to see a pair of tits in their newspaper are people who don't understand how to use the internet. So the people who don't understand how to use the internet are very, very elderly men. The Sun is providing a kind of weird medical service to help the elderly men, and I find it completely bizarre. And then then of course you get into that whole 75-year-old going, cool, look at those, of a 17, 18-year-old, and it's just like,
what strikes you particularly as you get older is just how incredibly young they look.
But we also found that young boys, your experience was very different. I did a tour of schools around Britain talking to young men and young women. We talked about page 3. I also spent time with Gail Dines, who you would know is the world's sort of most vocal anti-pornographer, sex addiction experts, people that work with the most violent sex offenders, and page 3 just didn't register. You know, men's magazines didn't register. You know, I used to edit men's magazines. The industry's dying. It's all been eclipsed by the internet. And not only that, but the type of content and offer. Page 3 isn't seen as sexually titillating by young men. It's part of the Sun's furniture. And I think that's what this comes down to. They see it as part of their world, and they're defending it because it's been attacked by the outside world. To them, it's not about sexual titillation. It's about, this is what we do. And if you don't like it, buy another paper.
Could not disagree with you more. You talked about how it's a kind of middle-class patronising attitude. The boys that I teach, in my school, 80% of boys are on free school meals. So they are the working class boys that you were talking about. And they are finding it as something that affects their view of women is inappropriate and, in their eyes, wrong. And I think that actually what is patronising is the idea that working class men can't get through the day without looking at a pair of knockers. They're not controlled by their penises.
I think...
Hi there.
Let's have the ladies at the front,
Yeah,
because we're going to have to come to them at some point.
Charlotte from the No More Page 3 campaign. I just would love to clear a few things up. First of all, thank you, Katie. We are fully behind your choices as a woman, and we actually support that on our campaign, absolutely, number one. Secondly, Martin, a YouGov poll in 2012, okay, a couple of years ago, but it was Sun readers. Majority of them voted to stop page 3.
That's not true.
It's not true. That's
true.
absolutely not true.
I actually went through...
Fundamentally untrue.
I went through...
a YouGov poll that was in 2012.
You can't do a YouGov poll of Sun readers. A YouGov poll will be of the population of a whole. The Sun's own research, which I went through yesterday, actually shows completely the opposite of that.
Totally
so
wrong.
65% totally in favour.
Sun readers. All right. Well,
YouGov is the population at large.
YouGov is the population as a whole, so that's not correct.
All right.
So
well,
continue.
Most people said to stop it. I apologise. I didn't realise that. Thirdly, the Daily Star images, there was a piece we did last year on that, and they're exactly the same, actually, as page 3 images in The Sun. And the readers' comments on that would suggest that they see that as pornographic material. It was people saying things like, I'd love to wank all over those juicy titties. You know, and that's absolutely fine in an adult-only publication. But in a family newspaper, no, it is not fine. And finally, I know this isn't about page3.com, but I personally strongly object as a woman to your feature on your website where you can spin a woman like a commodity.
I don't work for page 3.
Page3.com.
Yeah, I don't work for page 3.
Website.
No, it's not Martin who works for page3.com, it's his wife.
I launched the website in 2001, that wasn't part of it then.
You did mention it earlier on, and I'm referring to your point, where you can spin a woman like a wardrobe, it is violating.
I actually think that is one of the,
I don't think any of us are disagreeing on that.
It's not my favourite. It's not my favourite thing in the book.
Finally, Linda Lusardi has come out and said she thinks it's time for it to go. You know, we are actually fully behind you, Katie, as a woman, and we support your choices. I really want to say that here today. We do not condone at all bashing the models. That is not what we're about.
Thank you very much. Katie, would you like to respond to anybody?
I'm sitting here taking it all in because I agree. There's lots of things everyone's saying that I agree with. And obviously I can't not page 3 because that's where I started. But obviously that was, you'll probably agree, when I did it was when like Loaded, FHM, they were all, it's completely different now. Like you say, now you can just Google sex, you can buy sex up the road in Soho. It's completely different now to what it was nearly 17 years ago. Bloody hell, I'm old, aren't I now? But when I look at page 3 now, isn't it true the Sun now on Saturday, they don't put page 3 in? Is that right? Because it's more family buy it on a Saturday or something?
Yeah, they don't do it on Saturday or Sunday, and actually they haven't done since the mid-80s.
Oh, it shows how behind I am. No. But anyway...
most people don't realise that, though, even readers. They don't clock it. It's quite interesting.
But to be honest, I used to, I don't know if it's because it was my industry, look at the page and look who's on page 3, but now I just flick past it, or to be honest, go online, Daily Mail, I have to say, because it's easier, isn't it, than buying the paper.
I just wish we could have a debate where it didn't feel that men didn't have a voice. You know, I really do respect your campaign. Honestly, I think what you've done, you've motivated, your people in a very 21st century campaign, really intelligent, really clever. Hats off to that. Yes, okay. But what I'm talking about is engaging with Sun readers in a way that's non-confrontational.
One of the things
I wish we could do that in a mature way that didn't feel like mudslinging.
Laura, do you want to come back in on this? So we'll
Yeah, one of the things I think is really exciting about this new wave of feminism, including the No More Page 3 campaign, but also more broadly, is the amount of male support that it has, particularly from young men at universities, guys like the Sexpression group who are going into local schools. It has girls as well, but there's lots of really great guys, and they're going into local schools and they're talking about consent and healthy relationships. And, you know, a lot of the people in the No More Page 3 campaign are Sun readers themselves. This isn't about kind of people who would never read the Sun telling Sun readers what to do. In fact, anyone that's heard the story knows that Lucy Ann Holmes, who launched the campaign, launched it because she was reading the Sun, and that was what made her kind of start thinking about it. But I also think it's really interesting, the idea of the breast cancer thing. Is it okay to talk about that quickly? I think this is really interesting, and one of the things that people have been saying is that this might mean that page 3 saves a life, and doesn't that mean that it's a great thing in the world? And if the breast cancer campaign in The Sun saves a life, that will be an amazing thing that The Sun, as a big newspaper with a big circulation and a fantastic cancer charity, have done, and it will be great. But it won't have anything to do with page 3, because it wasn't necessary for there to be a woman next to that campaign with her breasts out in an objectified and titillating manner. It's kind of a bit like taking a Boeing 747 and putting an anti-cancer slogan on the side of it and then saying to climate change campaigners, well, you know, you're screwed now, you can't sort of claim that that's not polluting the world. It doesn't actually make any difference to what it does. And it's kind of insulting in a kind of, you know, this is not a zero-sum game idea. If The Sun really thinks it's going to be so patronizing as to think that people aren't capable of holding two different ideas in their heads at one time. You know, breast cancer, awful. Everyone absolutely wants to raise awareness about it and do as much as they can, but it doesn't really have any impact on page 3 and the harm that it does.
I disagree.
No, I disagree.
Let's hear from Katie on this.
It's just simple. I believe any charity you can do, any awareness you can do for any charity, does it really matter how you do it if it's raising awareness? The Sun, like I said, sells millions of papers each day. Obviously, I don't work for The Sun, even though I was a columnist a year ago, but, you know, opening it, I didn't know what that charity was before I saw it. So, yeah, some people agree or don't, but at the end of the day, I'm aware of that charity now, and I'm sure other people are, and every Tuesday, they're going to do a campaign about it, so you can't really knock that. Like I said, I challenge any of you to do better.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm not saying, I'm agreeing with you. What I'm saying is it doesn't have anything to do with page 3. I agree with you. It's wonderful that The Sun is providing a platform in their newspaper.
It also does have something to do with page 3, because, you know, believe it or not, you know, lots of female Sun readers, and there are 5 million of them every week, by the way, admire and respect the page 3 girls.
But do you think page 3 is aimed at them, Martin?
They don't have the same negative prism. And, you know, this charity is specifically aimed at girls in the 20s. The founder, Chris, is 23 and has stage 4 cancer.
I met her, I know her,
she is trying to get young girls to check their breasts. Young girls would never have thought about it before.
So do you think page 3 is aimed at young girls? Do you think that's the target audience?
On that platform, no, listen, on that platform...
Martin, I'm interested in what you think about this. Don't you think that it's slightly, it's a weird mix-up of the page 3 brand? I mean, page 3 is not for women, it's for men to look at and go in a titillating manner.
Is it?
Yes.
Because
yes.
If you,
I mean, it's like saying what was loaded there for women to have a look at. No, a woman was there so that men could look at it and go, 4 nice tears.
I've sat on Sun focus groups with Sun readers. Okay, you haven't. Okay, and women
I went through all the research on all the Sun readers yesterday. So.
Women also look at page 3. Oh, you have?
Yeah.
I mean, people who are laughing, saying women don't look at page 3. Of course it's primarily for men. I'm not retarded. Oh, that's a bad word. No.
And lesbians, women.
That's an off-con
Don't
word.
forget the lesbians, they might want to look at it.
You know, some women look at page 3, and you know it absolutely has engaged the female audience to check their breasts. And you know, I just don't. Anything they do with page 3, people who don't like it are going to hate.
Okay,
it's as simple as that.
Can we move on from Copperfield to another question? Let's up there at the back, the lady with the long hair with her hand up very keenly.
Thank you, with the microphone. My name's Caroline. I work for a children's charity called ChildNet International. We are an internet safety organisation. I work in schools every day with young people all over the UK, talking to them about how to use the internet safely. And as an organisation, we've really moved away from the internet safety type of ideal, and we're talking more about behaviour online. We talk a lot about how the internet is a bad place, but actually it's the people that are doing those things online that the responsibility lies with. In terms of the panel, what I want to ask you is, I feel that we're kind of losing sight of what it is of why page 3 is bad. Thinking about, well, actually, we need to educate young people about how to talk to other peers about what they're looking at online. We know that in terms of kind of research that's been done, that the effect on that pornography has in relationships is a negative one. So I'd just like to ask you what you think schools can do, teachers can do, organisations such as Say No to Page 3, these types of things. Thinking about, well, it's not from cutting it off from the tip, is it? It's thinking about it from the root. If these things aren't going away, how are we going to protect these young people?
Yeah, I'm interested. If you're in schools every day, do people talk to you about page 3, or are they saying internet pornography is a much bigger problem?
It's, I talk mainly about internet safety. Pornography and adult content is just a sideline of what I do. I don't get the opportunity to talk deeply about that.
I can go on this one.
Yeah, no, this is true.
Yeah. Well, I spent a lot of time with sex education experts in schools across Britain when we made the TV show, and the thing that struck me is just how antiquated and absurd, our current sex education curriculum is. And it's only on the basis that forward-thinking head teachers are inviting freelance experts in the Respect Yourself campaign, doing an amazing job. Yeah. Going off the rails, Johnny Hunt, we shadowed a few of his courses. And believe it or not, this will horrify some of you, no doubt, but I've been approached by the Home Office to go into schools too. Because young men, I think, respond to what I did because of my past. And some people are horrified by what I did by my past. But, to engage men in a credible way, in a non-judgmental way, I think you agree, is the point. And teachers aren't that person because they don't want to talk to them about sex. It's a bit embarrassing. So in your article, you said, we need to get people in the schools that are forward-thinking. And, in those lessons, we saw that, children as young as 13 know more about porn than the sex education teachers themselves. I mean, they'd all been watching amputee porn. They'd all been watching bestiality, and really, we were just horrified this is just happening. And this is happening in a void with a lack of education and also a fear that they can't go to anybody to talk about it if they're traumatised. And I think we need to sort of change all of that. And actually, back to the page 3 debate, what Johnny Hunt was saying, that page 3 and its like can form a valuable purpose. I'm not defending it, it's what he said, because social cues that are out there, which may be unpleasant, have to be dealt with by responsible parents. And, what we found with the guys who are exhibiting with sex addiction and porn addiction, they often lived in households where an attitude of prohibition was in place. A sense of shame filled that void, and they would turn into hardcore pornography and masturbation as a way of escaping. And so, I get very uncomfortable about banning things. I know you say it's not banning, but voluntary censorship, whatever it is. I get uncomfortable about things like that because I think it's very Victorian. And in actual fact, I think it's very 19th century because the biggest battle is on the internet.
Wouldn't you be pleased, though, if the Sun of its own free will went, OK, we get it. We don't want to be like the dirty old grandpa in the corner.
No.
Would you not think,
I wouldn't.
Good on you?
No, I wouldn't. No, because if you talk to Sun readers, that's not how they think.
I think
Well,
though that
Eleanor
the
knows
Sun.
about Sun readers. I don't.
No, I
particularly.
think that the Sun is shifting. I think that the campaign this week around breast cancer is a definite sign that they know that it is slightly stuck in the 70s. I mean, even Rupert Murdoch tweeted that maybe it had its day. They are shifting. I think they also know that they can't treat women in such a one-dimensional way anymore. I think what's fantastic about Katie is she shows that you can be, a page 3 girl and an intelligent, brilliant businesswoman, kind of life force, and that they know that they have to start treating their page 3 girls as real people, ambassadors, and I think that that's what we're going to see a lot more of over the next year or so. It's definitely on their radar, which you guys have helped to do, no question about it. Lady at the back with the scarf, and I think that's probably our last question because we're running out of time.
Hi there. I just wanted to add a point of clarification. Martin seemed to imply that a kind of souring of attitudes, I suppose, in the anti-page 3 campaign was responsible for, in some ways, bringing the debate to a standstill. The page 3 Copperfield campaign, I'm sorry to return to it again, is exactly what has brought the debate to a standstill. When you bring an issue like sexism and you yoke it to what is literally, for some people, a life and death issue, you make it impossible for people to kick against it. How can the campaign kick against page 3 when it's being used to promote such an important cause as breast cancer?
The campaign is still going, so...
Well, it's a sign, isn't it, that the Sun are realising that they have to change kind of what page 3 is, what it does, what its kind of focus is.
They spent a lot of time, you know, asking their female readers what they thought about page 3, and a lot of money.
There's a whole piece of work going on about it.
There is another aspect as well, of course, of all this, which we haven't mentioned, but which I've seen raised in the newspapers by some of the big breast cancer charities who've said that they have deep concerns about this campaign, which is that for a lot of women who are living with cancer, who are cancer survivors, and particularly women who have undergone or are in the process of undergoing mastectomies, to see page 3 linked to something which is very much to do with that, but for that to be linked with something which is about objectifying women's breasts and suggesting that women's breasts are a very, very big part of the sum value of who they are can be incredibly difficult and incredibly hard thing for them to cope with.
I think that's the last question we can take in terms of time. I was going to ask Katie maybe to say a last few words before we sum up. What do you think?
It's probably not really relevant, but I've got a point. Do any of you go topless on the beach?
Yes.
No, seriously.
Let's have a show of hands. How many people
Who goes topless on the beach?
What's that? About a third?
Wow.
Yeah.
So my point is, you'd get them out on a public beach. So what's the difference in doing it in a paper and getting paid for it?
Yeah.
That's a whole separate debate.
Well, I'm just saying, it's open a can of worms.
I'd like to really thank my panellists for coming and all of you for coming and the WOW Festival for having us.
Thanks.
And I really hope that you'll also check out the Women in Journalism Media Sexism campaign under that hashtag and keep this whole debate going because it's one that's going to run and run. And thanks so much for coming.